You know, UFO videos are not really a big deal anymore. What is a big deal are videos of cops ODing on opiates based on accidental exposure. You remember the video that my client filmed here in West Virginia of a cop overdosing, actually two cops overdosing, after a suspect allegedly threw fentanyl in a cop's face.
We know the rules. I'm out of the scene.
Listen, I'm not worried about this First Amendment bullshit.
I'm out of the
Go
scene.
up to that light pole right there. This whole area right here. Got dope and everything. Go.
Tape it off.
I'm getting ready to. Go. Now.
When you tape it, I'll move.
Go up there now. It's getting ready to be taped off. Go up there now.
I'm out of the scene.
Get in your car and go up there.
It was a big deal here, and the guy was charged with attempted murder of two police officers. Well, there's a huge update, and you may or may not be surprised. This hasn't even been in the news yet. This is basically breaking news here on the Civil Rights Lawyer channel. Basically, the criminal case is now over. The tox reports came back on the cops. We now know, was this a hoax? But first, I want to thank the sponsor of this video, Ridge Wallet. And this is the perfect time to buy, as Ridge is currently running a summer sweepstakes with a chance to win a brand new, upgraded Hennessy Ford Bronco, or $75,000 if you prefer cash. You'll also get 10 bonus entries as well as 10% off from using our link in the description. Use ridge.com/TCRL and you'll get 10 bonus entries, and if you use my code TCRL at checkout, you'll get 10% off. We've all seen the constant posts on social media about rewards for lost wallets. Ridge Wallet offers a smart wallet solution, so you'll never have to worry about that. The AirTag attachment simply attaches to your wallet to securely store your hard-earned cash. Using either the AirTag money clip or the cash strap, you can literally just track it and find it with your phone. They also offer an enhanced version with a carbon fiber cap to cover the white AirTag if you prefer a more sophisticated look. This wallet has over 80,000 5-star reviews. Ridge is so confident that you'll like it, they'll give you a test drive for 99 days, and you can send it back for a full refund if you don't love it. Each wallet comes with a lifetime warranty. Again, use my link at ridge.com/TCRL and you'll get 10% off. Or just go there and enter to win the Hennessy Bronco. Thanks again to Ridge for sponsoring this video and the channel. Now back to our video. This was the press release from the Fayette County Sheriff back in September of 2022. The subject reached into his pocket and ripped open a bag believed to be opiate narcotics in powder form and threw it into the officers' faces. The officers were able to get the subject in custody, at which time one of the officers collapsed and began actively overdosing. Shortly after, the second officer began to exhibit symptoms of the same. Thankfully, an off-duty nurse was passing by at the time and helped to render aid and administer Narcan, which ultimately saved the lives of these officers. Now I have access to the entire criminal case file, including the never-before-seen body cam footage of this incident. But let's start with the original charging document by, I believe, the same officer who says that he doesn't care about the First Amendment. He charged this defendant with 2 counts of attempted murder of both of these police officers. This was the narrative that went along with those charges. While conducting the investigation, the suspect, later identified as Keith Adams from Statesville, North Carolina, fled the traffic stop and ignored repeated commands to stop resisting. Keith Adams opened the plastic baggie, purposely exposing Patrolman First Class Tyler Hogan and Patrolman Brandon Dodrell to a Scheduled 1 controlled substance that incapacitated both officers, that required emergency administration of Narcan. This would have resulted in serious health conditions, including but not limited to respiratory arrest, cardiac arrest, and even death had Narcan not been administered rapidly. So those were the initial allegations in the first report and the first charges. And then boom, it was all over the news that this North Carolina man had attempted to murder 2 police officers by exposing them to fentanyl, but fortunately their lives were saved by the administration of Narcan by a nurse who just happened to be coming by. that was a narrative that's been out there. The guy was charged, so they were going after this guy. They were prosecuting him. Another police officer is then tasked with investigating it. And my client, who had filmed much of this alleged overdose, participated in that and volunteered and provided his video footage of what really happened. And so here, let's now look at the ultimate police report that came out of that, which now we're seeing for the very first time. Corporal Hogan and PFC Dodrell stated during the arrest that they gave multiple commands to the suspect to stop resisting and that the suspect was able to grab a plastic bag containing what they believed to be suspected narcotics. Corporal Hogan and PFC Dodrell made several commands to drop the bag, and the suspect tore open the bag, placed the bag in the face of PFC Dodrell, and then squeezed the bag with malice and exposed both officers to the unknown substance. Corporal Hogan and PFC Dodrell was able to get handcuffs on the suspect, and both officers fell ill and was incapacitated by the exposure, and EMS was requested. While waiting on the EMS to arrive on scene, an off-duty nurse driving by at the time stopped and rendered aid by administered several doses of Narcan. The symptoms PFC Dodrell and Corporal Hogan experienced were indicative of opioid exposure. And that's it. So in the final report, they're not saying that conclusively there was any opioid exposure or overdose by the officers. They just say that Narcan, that they were exposed, that Narcan was administered, and that they were indicative. Oddly, nothing else is mentioned in there, no other specifics, including the toxicology reports from the police that were not mentioned at all in this report. I wonder why they would do that. Nor did they mention that the police officers involved admitted that what really happened is the female cop tased the male cop. That's what he was experiencing. They didn't mention any of that in the report. But let's take a look at the officers' explanations of what happened, their reports. Okay, here's the police report written by Corporal T.M. Hogan of the Oak Hill Police Department, and that is, I believe, the female police officer. As soon as I started sprinting over to assist PFC Dodrell, the male subject driving left the area. When I got to PFC Dodrell, the male subject was not listening to any commands he was being given. He had several large baggies and a green bag in his hands. These bags were filled with powder substances. While attempting to put this subject in handcuffs with PFC Dodrell, this subject began squeezing and intentionally breaking open the bags of the powder substance, getting this powder substance in the area of us on the roadway. This male subject had one handcuff on while we were attempting to cuff this subject. While still attempting to take this subject into custody, I tasted something chalky in my mouth and spit it out. I discovered several baggies had fallen out of this green bag, and I sat some to the side to avoid contact with these substances. The subject then bit PFC Dodrell's arm while still being combative. PFC Dodrell then moved away from this subject while I was still attempting to apprehend this subject completely. PFC Dodrell then appeared to be very dizzy and was struggling to stand up straight. PFC Dodrell then removed his baton and began striking this subject's arm in an attempt for me to gain control on this male subject. He would still not let go of the powder bag and green bag or comply with orders given. PFC Dodrell then advised me to tase this subject again. I then got my taser, which had fallen under the subject during this struggle. After locating it, I turned it on and squeezed the trigger to release the taser barbs. The barbs in my taser would not come out. It appeared to be jammed. I squeezed the trigger on my taser approximately 5 times. My prongs would not release out of it. While squeezing it, it kept doing the drive stun feature and would not release the barbs. I turned this taser off and went to holster it, at which point one barb came out, striking PFC Dodrell, that would be the other police officer, in the lower leg area. I then turned this taser back on and back off, and it went off completely. I attempted to tase this subject several times before putting it away. I then began to attempt to apprehend this subject again. This subject was then put into handcuffs in the front. PFC Dodrell was standing up and told me he thinks he is overdosing. So that's her story, which she just sort of casually mentions that she had tased the other police officer. And now he's having these symptoms. Of course, it's the opiate exposure. Yeah. And then we have the statement from the other officer, the male officer. And he says this: I chased after him, giving several commands to stop, and deployed a single shot from my taser, striking him in the back. This caused him to fall face forward onto the pavement. When the taser cycle stopped, he immediately attempted to get up. I deployed another shot from the taser into his back. I noticed that the vehicle was moving and was fleeing the traffic stop as well. I radioed Officer Hogan that he was running, and I attempted to take the subject into custody. He refused to comply with orders and kept attempting to reach in his bag. I was able to secure his arms away from the bag. I was unable to handcuff him as he kept reaching in the bag, thinking he may have a firearm. I secured his arms and I yelled at Officer Hogan that I needed assistance, and she came to assist. And boy, did she. The subject was fighting to get away the entire time and continually tried to get into his bag. I was able to get handcuffs on his left arm, but then he pulled away with the handcuffs still attached. He was able to remove a bag of white powder and tore it open. While he had the bag in his hand, my head was in the immediate area, and he began to deliberately squeeze the bag, making the contents come out on me. I was unable to move away and had inhaled some of it. The subject intentionally bit my left upper arm and right lower arm while attempting to detain him. Officer Hogan was still attempting to get him in handcuffs, but I had moved away to get out of the powder. I then removed my baton from the holder and began striking the subject in the left arm and lower torso in an attempt for Officer Hogan to gain control of the... Jesus, don't they even teach anything about grammar of sentences in police academy? I mean, come on. Of the hands so we could secure him in handcuffs. I began feeling lightheaded. I remember telling Officer Hogan to use her taser. Mine was out of cartridges, and the taser was lying on the ground. Big mistake. I don't remember anything else during the event with Mr. Adams. After asking his female police partner to use her taser, he doesn't remember anything else. The next thing I remember, I was being inside a EMS unit. So that's his story. And he doesn't admit that the female cop tased him. He just asked her to use her taser, and then he basically went black. He doesn't remember anything else after that point. So that's what they said happened back then. That was in September of 2022. Now we can fast forward to the present day. What's the update? What happened? Well, guess what? All the state criminal charges were dropped. We just listened to the police reports of both those police officers and how many state law crimes did they allege. I mean, this guy bit a cop, he attacked a cop. I mean, he did all sorts of stuff. You name it. He should be spending the rest of his life in prison, right? If everything they said is true. And then, not to mention, he attempted to murder two cops, caused them both to overdose, and they would have died, but not for a nurse coming by with some Narcan. So those are a lot of crimes that are alleged. But guess what? The prosecuting attorney dropped all the charges, dropped all of them. Here's a dismissal order. I'll put everything at the blog at thecivilrightslawyer.com. Now, why did he do that? Well, he doesn't say in the dismissal order. All it says is, well, the feds are going to pick up on the drugs. It doesn't say anything about the real reason that they're dropping all these state charges. Well, the real reason is that the toxicology reports on the police came back, and guess what? Now, I don't have these. I don't have the physical documents because they were sealed in the criminal case, not surprisingly. I have it on the best authority that the toxicology reports came back on these two cops, and guess what? No opiates whatsoever. They did not overdose. This was all just a big hoax. And so not only did they not drop the charges for attempted murder, which were bogus, but they didn't charge him with biting cops, with pretty much everything that they alleged here. I'll put the raw footage that you can see of the violence that YouTube is not going to let me show. I'll put it at the blog so you can watch it yourself. And then you can read those police reports, which I'll also post, and you can see if they match up to you. Was this guy fighting and attacking the cops, or were they just beating on him and tasing each other? I would submit to you that the video footage shows something that looks much more like the latter version of events. And just to be sure, I went and pulled the federal indictment off of Pacer, and all the guys charged with are the federal drug possession crimes under federal law. There are no allegations being brought up in federal court that this guy had attacked these police officers in any way. So all those charges, they were all dropped because it didn't happen. So here's what's happening now. Sort of like I called it from the beginning, This was not a case of a guy throwing fentanyl onto the faces of police officers and then causing them to overdose. This is just your plain old story of police officers using excessive force against somebody, coupled with this hysteria that's gone around the country in recent years of police officers thinking that they're overdosing on something for some reason. Where does this end up now? Well, this guy he was seriously injured as a result of the beating and tasing that he suffered at the hands of the police officers. And again, you can look at the video and judge it for yourself, but this guy does not appear to be fighting them or really resisting them at all. They're just sort of flipping out on him, and they're hitting him and they're tasing him. And again, also tasing each other. And this guy did then receive documented medical injuries, unlike these police officers. So I do believe, I'm still investigating, but I believe that there is an excessive force case here. And apparently this guy is interested in having me represent him and file a federal civil rights lawsuit for the excessive force. And again, the issue is not whether he had illegal drugs or whether he's in trouble for that now in federal court. The issue was excessive force used on him? And I guess there's also a secondary issue here of, is there some sort of constitutional liability here for the false accusations that he had attempted to kill 2 police officers, and it was put all in the media, and he was prosecuted for a year over that, and it turns out those charges were completely bogus. So I'll definitely be looking into that. There's a Fourth Amendment aspects to it. So I'm going to go through the body cam footage. I've got all the body cam footage now, so I would be looking for some update videos on this with some of the additional footage, some of the body cam footage that's never been released. I'm still going through it. There's actually a lot there. So make sure to subscribe both here and at the blog at thecivilrightslawyer.com. And then there's also the aspect of my client who was filming this, and was his First Amendment rights violated when he's standing well away from the situation. And thankfully he was filming it, because that's one of the reasons that this guy was exonerated from this, is that there was a citizen filming what happened. Otherwise, who knows what would have happened. So as always, thanks for watching. Remember, freedom is scary. Deal with it. I'll see you next time.